So thank you very much for coming in. I believe this is the first financial services conference for the season, and looking at the turnout, this promises to be a very, very nice event. Just to introduce myself, Bhaskar Dasgupta. I am the chairman of the board for Apex in its Israel, GCC, and Indian entities. Apex, without going into too much detail, is a diversified financial services group. And insofar as this particular audience is concerned, we look after roughly about 4,000 hedge funds in various shapes and sizes globally. So, about the event, a short story, if you will. It's early part of the last year that we started to see quite a lot of interest from hedge funds to explore, especially this region, and specifically the UAE. And this was primarily coming from what I would call as PMs who were coming here, great place to stay, especially after COVID, tax advantages, et cetera, and quite a lot of people actually started to come in. And then we noticed that actual fund inquiries shot up quite a lot. This was around Q2. Inquiries about setting up, capital raise, so on and so forth. And okay, so this sounds like an interesting opportunity. So off we trotted to London and US to do a few road shows with some prime brokers. And the interest was even more. And from what I'm hearing from my colleagues in the regulatory authorities, they started to get absolutely run off their feet with the number of inquiries and applications coming through. Good problem to have. On the other side of the region, in Israel, Apex also supports quite a lot of hedge funds, and they have been running a hedge fund event there for past 10 years. And it's quite an interesting ecosystem that has developed over here. So the background to this, and I spoke with Hedge, and we thought, actually, you know what, let's get the hedges together. And so here we are. So if you look at it, the last time the hedge fund ecosystem got together over here was back, if I'm not wrong, in 2008. Other asset management associations and conferences have happened, but something that is dedicated to hedge funds, not so much. So I think the timing is absolutely perfect, and just look at the turnout. So let me take a step back and talk about why this region. And as you can make out from my rather white hair and corpulent middle, I have been around the block, and there is much to go around as well. Whether you're talking about Connecticut, whether you're talking about Singapore, West End of London, New York, Hong Kong, these places are places where you would actually see quite a lot of hedge funds. The Financial Times reported that, according to its stats, last year, there are somewhere around about 30,077 funds in the world, quite a lot. And just to compare, they said that there are 18,700 Burger King restaurants. I have no idea why that comparison was made, but it just tells you that there are more people doing hedge funds than eating, or at least going and having the opportunity to go at Burger King restaurants. Double Whopper is good, by the way. 65% are in USA. But then, as I said, the number of firms that are actually exploring setting up in this particular region, and specifically in the UAE, has substantially shot up. And it's not like they're just coming here. Very, very interestingly, you also have a welcoming ecosystem over here. We have the regulators who have been doing roadshows in London, in New York, in Far East. They're all welcoming firms to come here and get them set up. Not just that. We are starting to see that regulators are actually becoming extremely efficient. Imagine getting an IPA in a matter of weeks. That is, let's just put it in this way, making it extremely easy and fast for hedge funds to start. And if there's one thing which we know, hedge funds aren't really noted for patience. So fast is good. The other thing that obviously which we noticed, and given the footprint that we have got of roughly about $3 trillion, we tend to have a very good view of where the LP and the allocators ecosystem is working. Now, the big people who are here, and we all know the names, and some of them are available over here, they are actually not looking for capital. It's a good place to be in. Very, very good place to be in. What they are coming here is for a good place for their PMs to be based. It's a great place for the time zone coverage between Asia, between Europe, and of course, to a certain extent, US as well. But because of the sheer, let's say, mass of big firms and the multi-strat firms who are coming in, it's starting to attract the mid-range people as well. Besides this, the first-time fund managers are also coming in. Now, this is where the fact that the regulators and the supporting ecosystem is becoming so welcoming is actually playing into the hands of the particular region, and specifically UAE, to become a great host nation for startup funds. The other thing, going back to the capital raise that I talked about, was the Dubai specifically, and this particular region has seen a large influx of family offices, ultra-high net worths, and they are coming culturally from several backgrounds which are very accustomed to investing in the, let's just say, the right-hand side of the risk distribution. So whether we are talking about the Russian money, whether we are talking about Indian money, whether we are talking about Asian money, and of course the traditional multifamily offices or single-family offices, you have the availability of capital over here to set up your first-time fund or the mid-size fund as well. So, actually, I should also point out one thing. Just down the road is perhaps one of the highest concentrations of prop shops. Somebody mentioned there are about 1,700 prop shops. Another figure was quoted as 4,000 prop shops of at least 3 traders each. The model is very simple. You give them a small desk, you give them a Bloomberg, give them 3 million or 5 million, off you go, and you skim off top, and there you go. So for hedge funds who are looking for people, and I see my friends around here who are in the recruitment agencies, go and nick some people from there, especially around the DMCC. You got some very, very good people there. Some of the trends that we have started to see based upon our read of the 4,000 odd hedge funds that we are looking at. Unlike, as I say, rumors of the hedge fund demise, it's not. The hedge fund market is still growing, and our expectation is, despite the interest rate, which I'll come to in a moment, interest rate rises, the hedge fund sector is still growing. Long-short equity is doing very well, and global macro, again, you wouldn't be surprised because of the interest rate aspects. Second thing, crypto hedge funds are coming back into the market or setting up new ones. Well, we know the reason why it took a dip, but this is the place where regulators are extremely welcoming of crypto funds, not just who are investing, but also who are tokenizing. But not just that, but also interesting tokens that they can be investing in. So one of the things that I was talking earlier today morning was the fact that carbon hedge funds are starting to come in who are interested because tokenized carbon certificates are getting out into the market. And that gives you the liquidity for the secondary market for hedge funds to start playing around with. The next thing that we found, based upon what Apex has been doing and a bit of my personal experience as well, traditionally what has happened is, and people would know, is that if you are a hedge fund and going and talking to an allocator, you would physically have to jump into a plane and then go over to Geneva, to London, and you physically have to meet. So the process and the complexity of fundraising was stretched out, and it took time. But what COVID has done is that it has changed the landscape to a certain extent that allocators, LPs, endowments, sovereigns are very, very comfortable to have the first 2-3 conversations on a virtual basis. Previously, it was quite, as I said, a relationship you had to keep on going and you would waste time. But now, virtual access, the platforms that are coming up, means that quite a lot of the initial conversations and either qualifying in and qualifying out can be done online. So this is what I'm trying to say is that the mid-market and the smaller firms or the startups who are trying to raise money, they are becoming more and more efficient to actually raise money. The flip side of that is that what we are hearing, the quality of your deck has suddenly almost doubled in importance. Because you are presenting on a virtual basis, you have to make sure that your content and your collateral is top quality. Well, interest rate hikes are feeding through the allocator piece. It's going to be difficult for you to compete with somebody who says you're going to get almost 9% risk-free. Investors are still doing substantial amount of reallocation, and we are, in this region, outside seeing quite a lot of people who are coming in and asking for investor allocation frameworks, manager selection, so on and so forth. But the promising thing is, just in this region, over the last, I would say, couple of months, I've spoken to about 4 banks and sovereigns who wanted to speak to me about, can we do something about hedge funds and the investor allocation? So this is obviously going to feed through another 6 months or so, but they will have a framework ready for investment. And it's all because this place is starting to buzz. There are local people who are having funds with whom they can speak to. ESG is coming in. I know speaking ESG to hedge funds is perhaps not a good idea, but the reason why I wanted to raise this is because the allocators, especially in Europe, and some of the sovereigns have started to incorporate ESG into their investor allocation criteria. So please keep an eye out on that, because without that, you will have an issue. But on the flip side, you need to be careful about what you say about ESG, especially when you're going to the US. Sometimes it doesn't land as well, and you know what I mean. Fee compression is happening. Those Helicon days of 220 have long since passed. Right now, we are seeing it's more like about 1.3, 1.4 to about 16 or so. That is a substantial reduction in the kind of fees and performance fees that you can charge. And one of the aspects that this particular fee compression is driving is that hedge funds are becoming more efficient. They are outsourcing more. They are starting to just focus on the investment decision, the capital raise, and that's about it. Because when you're starting to talk about fee compression, the thing that is under your control are your costs. So why mess around with all those things? I mean, I started my career in London, and the amount of hedge funds who were moving all their back office operations to Ireland is legion. But we're seeing more of that coming through. Don't have to say about AI and machine learning, quite a lot of that happening. One interesting thing that I've noticed over the last 6 months, traditionally in the hedge fund world, the smaller funds have traditionally outperformed the larger funds. But over the last 6 months, it's the situation seems to have changed. I have to admit, I don't know why, or at least I couldn't find out a good reason. The only thing I thought about was that the larger funds were able to place the larger bets to take advantage. I don't know, make of that what you will. So I think I've said enough. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for coming over. Some people have flown from long distances, for which I thank you, and I hope you have an excellent conference. Thank you very much.